Hello, YouTube. I want to continue with the Mongolian death worm investigation and bring you some more information that I think virtually no one in the West, or let's say outside of the former Soviet Union, knows about. On December 16, in the year 2021, the Institute of Classical Oriental and Antiquity held a regular meeting of the seminar Souls and Spirits in Chinese Culture. Dmitry Alexeyevich Nosov, research associate of the Institute of Oriental Manuscripts of the Academy of Sciences, candidate of Philological Sciences, made a report titled Hunting for a Giant Worm, Instructions for the Use of Bigfoot and the Ancient Masters of the New Republic, Mongolian Folklore Narratives in the Expedition Reports of V.A. Kazakevich, 1896 to 1937. In his report, the scientist presented new sources of information about rare Mongolian cryptids previously unknown to researchers. You see, in the autumn of 1923, Vladimir Alexandrovich Kazakevich, a student of the Mongolian department of the Petrograd, St. Petersburg today, Institute of Living Oriental Languages, made his second expedition to Mongolia, and in the period from September 11 to December 1, 1923, he visited the Khoshuns administrative territories of Tushet Van and Mergen Van. During the expedition, the Russian scientists recorded a description of the mythological creature Oloi Khorkhoi, with an indication of its habitat. Here's more on the text of the report that was actually dated January 4, 1924, from the scientist Kazakevich. The hunt for the giant worm in 1923 took place as follows. By the end of the day, I reached Dzak Suji well, where I was told before the location of the Olgoi Khorkhoi worm is located. The owner of the yurt that turned out to be here answered my questions reluctantly, but at my request he took me to the place where, according to legend, this worm should live. He said that the worm, if it shows up, it is only during the summer heats that it does so. This place is located to the west of the Dzak Suji well, half verst from it, behind a dry riverbed in which 3 desert poplars grow. The land here is covered with large sandy hummocks, 1 to 2 arshin high, completely overgrown with trunks. I decided not to look for the worm, as I have heard from many about the untimely nature of this. And after driving a little through Saksaul, I spent the night at the Ihir well. As for Olgoi Khorkhoi, I know the following about it. I know 4 to 5 people who say they have seen it. They have all seen it for a long time, with the exception of only one Shabganza. The meaning is old woman, approximately, who saw the worm about 2 years ago at the Hoshu well, which is under the southern slope of the Argalinta mountains mentioned above. Thus, 2 of its locations are known. Almost all eyewitnesses observed the worm in a sandy area, in hummocks with a chest. The only exception is Shabganza, in whose yurt the worm suddenly appeared behind the chest. Her family began to pack hastily in order to move to another place, but when the door frame was removed, the Olgoi Khorkhoi was found under the threshold. Then they threw down the doors and hurriedly ran away. The reason for this fear lies in the belief, that this worm is extremely poisonous. People and animals die from touching it. The poison even passes through a stick if the stick touches it. There are purely legendary tales. It is as if, on a hot day, the worm buries one end in the sand and stands motionless, straight as a stick. Of living creatures, reportedly only a cat can kill that worm by touching it with its paw after licking it. The opinion of all eyewitnesses agrees that the worm is no more than an arshin long, approximately 71 centimeters, an adult specimen, as thick as an arm of the wrist, and has no head. I couldn't figure out its color then because some called it green, others yellow-gray. Getting out of the sand, it crawls for a short distance, writhing like a snake, and then buries itself very quickly. It is found in Dzak Sujin Gobi, but one of the eyewitnesses as a boy saw it in the Holshun of Urat Dumdu Guna. And then follows is the exact location in the archives, Russian archives, of the manuscripts, writings, reports, like this one, Central State Administration of St. Petersburg, followed by the numbers. Now let me explain to you about this. Verst or versta in Russian. It's an obsolete measurement of land. The basic unit called the arshin, which came into the use in the 16th century also, it was standardized by the Peter the Great in the 18th century to measure exactly 28 English inches, 71.12 centimeters. Also, 80 vershoks equal 20 pyads equal 5 arshin equals 140 English inches, 355.60 centimeters. So 1 versta is equal to 1.066 kilometers, 3,500 feet. An interesting fact in Kazakevich's notes, the Olgoy Horhoi does not possess such damaging factors as electric discharge and spitting poison. In particular, the ability to kill victims at a distance was described by Ivan Yefremov. And you can find it in my other videos about Mongolia, a country I really like to talk about, and I hope there's more exploration and just more opening of that great land to the world. Nosov also throws attention to the fact that legends about the increased body toxicity and vulnerability to a cat are typical for ordinary snakes. During a trip in September of 1924, Kazakevich wrote the following from an unknown informant. According to legend, the Noin Bogdo Mountains in ancient times were called Dokshin Bhara, and there was a Shoron or Haran Horchoi beast in them, looking like a wolf or a fox. It mercilessly destroyed cattle and people and was probably the embodiment of the mountain spirit of these places. Doesn't it remind you of another animal quite known now through the world? Shoron Mong, in Mongolian, I believe it's Shorun. Well, in Mongolian, it means earthy, of earth, and Hara Horhoi, black worm. In Nosov's book, titled Cryptids of Buryatia and Baikal, he cites a legend about an earth snake recorded in the Barguzinsky district of Buryatia. Let's look at the part of the text. Back in the early 20th century, the population of Barguzin Valley was afraid of the earth snake, which according to their belief lived in deep holes, hunted animals, and sucked their blood. This was confirmed by the corpses found with characteristic wounds. Local residents believed that with the onset of cold weather, the earth snake breaks through its passages into a warm stable, where it attacks the cattle contained there. The earth serpent, let's say, in the Buryat language is Shoroon Mogoi. If we consider that among the Mongolian-speaking people, the snake was considered Lusin Ezen, Luz being the host spirit, and the mention of the snake was taboo, for example, among the Oirat people, then Mogoi was often replaced by Horhoi, worm, or other figurative definitions. Such a replacement gives reason to assume that a variety of the famous Mongolian killer worm Olgoi Horhoi, which adapted to suck blood like a leech, could live on the territory of Buryatia. Moreover, the Mongols also talk about another kind of Shar Horhoi, yellow worm, also hiding in burrows. In the Buryat language, it will be like Shara, Sharakchin Horhoi. North of things, the search for the information about this earthworm should be continued, especially considering the hematophages have not been found among snakes. The information about the Mongol substitution of taboo words was well known to Kazakevich too. Apparently, therefore, he subsequently wrote, "During my expeditions to the Gobi, I was especially interested in the so-called Olgoi Horhoi, known only by stories. In 1923, I even specifically searched for it, but unsuccessfully. Subsequently, I was able to collect widespread and verified data about this animal, which turned out to be a Gobi species of sand boa, with the ability to quickly burrow into the ground. The Gobi, considering the snake to be terribly poisonous, are mortally afraid of it. Kazakevich's fifth expedition took place from May to July 1925 in the Buryat Khoshuns of the Bogdo Khan Ula and Han Hentei Ula Aymags. During meetings with local residents, he recorded several messages about Hun Horhoi and Hun Hara, which are of interest to cryptozoologists. One of the legendary animals is the Honhor, wormman. He is described as a tiny man, the size of half an arshin, 35.5 centimeters approximately, who resides in the sands. At night, Hun Horhoi sneaks up to the sheep and sucks them. If you touch him, he begins to take revenge, sending damage to the herds. Shilabi Sin Gol and the southern part of Khoshun, Kurban Saihan Ula, were pointed out to me as his place of residence. Others say he is found in northern Tibet and is only slightly shorter than a man, has grown fur, loves very human women, whom he often grabs and takes them to his burrow. By the way, they talk with special pleasure about the legendary beast Hun Hara, and the narrators manage to leave the listener wondering whether or not to believe in the reality of these tales. Hun Hara is supposedly of enormous stature, a cross between a man and a bear. His hair is long and falls right over his eyes. Therefore, he always has the habit of walking against the wind, which pushes his hair off his face. And with a fair wind, he sees nothing. Its main food is marmots. Using its enormous strength, the Hun Hara puts its paw into the Tarbagan hole and takes out huge blocks of earth, of soil, after which he grabs the prey. After killing the marmot, he puts it under his arm and moves on. After catching a new marmot, he puts it back under his arm, not noticing how the first one falls from there. And he hunts like that all day. By evening, left with only one marmot, I think groundhog is another name for it, Hun Hara becomes enraged, breaking trees and roars, but quickly comes down. If a person encounters him, then any escape is useless. He will still catch up and kill out of anger, so it's better to stand still. Then the good-natured beast will take the man by the arm and walk with him. In this case, it is worth putting something into his paws with the other hand, as he will forget about the human hand and put the object in its place, not noticing that he has released the prisoner, who takes advantage of the opportunity and runs away. This information, in an abbreviated and modified form, became known to those interested in the topic of cryptids from the text in the information materials of the Commission for the Study of the Question of the Bigfoot, issue 3, Moscow 1959, section Mongolian Legends of Hun-Hara, as well as in the book by Boris Porshnev, The Current State of the Issue on Relict Hominoids, Chapter 6, Information from China and Mongolia, 1963 edition. At the same time, there are no references to V.A. Kazakevich in both editions. Nosov also draws attention to this fact in his article Documents by V.A. Kazakevich, Reports on Trips to Mongolia from 1923 to 1925. The second case known to me of the removal of the name of Kazakevich from scientific use is also related to the materials of the fifth expedition. In 1959, in the publication of the Commission for the Study of the Bigfoot, the first head of the Russian language department of the Mongolian State University, Kluyeva, published a story about a mythological character, Hun-Hara, reference to Porshnev and Shmakov, 1959, pages 16 to 17. She pointed out that the story was recorded by one of the Soviet citizens in Mongolia and given to me when I worked in Ulaanbaatar from 1944 to 1950. Page 17, same book. A comparison of this text with the narrative of Hun-Hara given by V.A. Kazakevich in the report showed that Kluyeva prepared for publication one of the folklore works recorded during his expedition to Kerulen and Halhin Gol, subjecting it to significant stylistic processing. As a result, it is only now that Vladimir Alexandrovich Kazakevich's folklore recordings have acquired the status of source of information for cryptozoologists. I think it would not be superfluous to note that in the 1930s he worked closely at the Institute of Oriental Studies of the USSR Academy of Sciences with such a well-known person for the cryptozoological community as Tsiben Zamtsaranovich Zamtsarano, the Buryat Orientalist scientist, who studied the question or the existence of a relict hominoid on the territory of Mongolia in the late 1920s. Now let me add something else. Vladimir Kazakevich was a researcher at the Institute of Oriental Studies from 1929 to 1937. On June 15, 1935, without submitting a PhD thesis, he was awarded the degree of Candidate of Historical Sciences. He was a very smart scientist, very knowledgeable. On August 30, 1937, he was arrested on charges of espionage in favor of Japan under the Article 51-A of the Criminal Code of the Russian Soviet Federal Socialist Republic and sentenced to capital punishment. They killed him. Vladimir Kazakevich's rehabilitation took place in 1989 when Mikhail Gorbachev introduced his policies of openness and ability for the Soviet population to speak. As you can see, those who ruled my motherland in the 1930s were much more terrifying than any Hun-Hara could be. I will bring you more stories about Mongolia because, you see, from decades of research that I have conducted, from the works I have studied, from the encounters I had with people who were there on site too, and more, I am convinced that there are underground cities, if you can call them that, under Mongolia. And there is much more to that land that we know about. And to study it, of course, you need real attention, real money, real scientists, which just doesn't exist in today's world. But it's a wonderful, wonderful country from the point of view of paranormal research. And I'm sure in the future, I hope it doesn't take another 100 years, we'll find out more about the Olgoi Khorkhoi and about other cryptids and creatures that exist in Mongolia. So if you like my research and you can support me, please do so through the links you'll find in the description to this video. Please tell others about my work. Please like my videos. Thank you for all your attention to my work.